Can I just ask you something about one of the things that was a theme from this morning and is a theme today really is looking into the future and seeing what's coming in and preparing for it really. How does your company do that?
We wouldn't say, I wouldn't say that we're at the bleeding edge because we're such a big company. We tend to have very proven technology coming into the business. So we, to use that expression that I used earlier, we wouldn't be going out on the skinny branches with unproven technology. But at the same time, we use the same sources as a lot of other Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies. And that would be things like Gartner and Forrester and all of these things to say, here are the emerging technologies. We would also attend particularly courses or seminars in terms of emerging technologies, and I can think of an example of one that we're participating in over the next 3 or 4 weeks. It's on the west coast of the States. It's about the future of the web, and we would get ideas from something like that. Now, you think if it's the west coast, they're all sitting around on bean bags and smoking joints and coming up with ideas for the future, and who knows, maybe that is the way that they do things there. But we use that as some way of looking into the crystal ball to see who the players are, how we should be interacting with those, and then what we do is we bring it back into a sort of a sandbox, as we would call it, in the organization, and we let some of our guys play with technologies. And to a certain extent, we're playing with things like social networking and things like that. How can you make something like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and various other things work for you as an organization? And sometimes you have to scratch your head a lot, try and figure out ways of doing it. But one of the ways that we did it, and this is something that probably we will collaborate with the colleges in the future. We did an internal thing which we called App Attack, which is develop some mobile apps. Just take a weekend, do whatever you need to do, but come up with some good ideas for applications, and the winner will get a cash prize. In this case, I think we were giving out something like £2,500 of a cash prize for the winner. And it's amazing the amount of creative juices that gets going in an organization. And sometimes you get crazy ideas, but sometimes you get ideas that are very applicable to the business. Now, how we would like to lengthen something like that is there's a group of programmers in Northern Ireland that meet, and they're all mobile application guys who tend to be the pointy-headed guys, and these are the real nerds, if you like, who are getting into developing mobile applications. Now, I don't mean to demean them. These are exactly the sort of people that we want to plug into, the Generation Y folks who understand Facebook and have lived with it for the last 10 years. And we're trying to figure out, can they come up with ideas for us as a business, that applications that we could use or whatever. So I think probably our next step is to engage with that group, and there's a group of people in Northern Ireland who meet called Code for Pizza, and they meet, I think it's every 2 weeks or something like that, and they literally, somebody buys the pizza every week and they all get together and say, look at what I'm doing and can you help me out with this, and somebody else does the same thing. And they don't really do it for commercial gain. They do it just to increase their skills and to become, if you like, more nerdified as the time goes on. But the beauty of that is that we're hooking into those Generation Y people, and we're seeing it as they see it, because that is the future as far as we're concerned. Now, that's on one side of it. That's the social networking, all of the applications. There are emerging sensible technologies, if you like, on the other side of the shop, which would be the next greatest database or operating system or whatever it happens to be. And now we would tend to use the various analysts and consultants as far as that's concerned, and then we wait until it's pretty much proven technology before we'll dive in as far as that's concerned, because we've got so much invested in 40-year-old COBOL code. It's very hard for us to change from things like that. So what we do is we put the mobile layers on the front end of it, but the engine room's still pretty much mainframe and COBOL. I don't know if that answered your question, but I maybe got a bit off track there along the way, but I thought I'd made a few points that were relevant along the way. Sorry, question at the back.
I work in a college too, not one of the things you mentioned, and it's great to hear all the good words you say about colleges. obviously you've got quite a big business, and that engagement with BMC is fairly productive and easy to manage for a big business. A big challenge that the colleges have is engaging with SMEs. And I'm just wondering, before you leave, if you have any thoughts or ideas or suggestions on that.
The issue, I suppose, with SMEs, taking on one employee is a big decision for an SME. And investing in training and things like that. So if I'm an SME, and I was an SME because I had a business for probably 20 years or something like that, and started as an SME and became, well, technically I was an SME. We employed about 40 or 50 people at the end of the day, but that's still SME territory and EC speak. You tend to look at the business in terms of skinning it down and saying, right, well, why should I invest in training for people? I should go out and get the right people. Or you try and make sure that the people you hire in the business are very flexible and can play a number of roles within the organisation. But I do remember even in those days, the point was made to me, I would say, we can't afford to spend all this money on training and all the rest of it. And then somebody said to me, yes, but what price? Ignorance. And that did kind of strike a chord with me that, you do have to make investments somewhere along the way. And that's why I think one of the ways forward is to look at it collectively, not look at it as one SME requires 1 day a week or half a day a week to train somebody in such and such a technology. If we look at it collectively and say, right, this is pain that's shared by a number of SMEs, these are technologies that they need to train themselves up in, and then offer some of the ideas that we've come up with would be outside hours training, 2 hours a week or 2 hours a week on 2 nights over a period of weeks that would be supported in a lot of cases by government funding, and getting people, if you like, to say you're therefore not necessarily losing the employee, but they're volunteering to up their CV, and that's part of the issue, I suppose, for SMEs, because they look at it. If I train these people, they become more marketable. They're going to hold me to ransom, or else they'll get a job somewhere else. So that's part of, and you have to put yourself in the position of an SME in that respect. But I think if you choose the people wisely, if you get them to understand that they're making an investment in their people, it's going to have a long-term downstream effect on their business. And yes, they might have to pay them more, but they're going to get 50% more out of the people at the end of the day. I think we need to do a bit more selling on that point of view. And I think if we can get that collective going and get a whole lot of people getting up and telling the war stories and saying this is how it helped us as a business, and particularly in technology, a year, 2 years in technology business is like a lifetime. The technologies can move so quickly. I mean, who'd have thought that you would be looking at the internet on one of these things 10 or 15 years ago? Who'd have thought that you'd be shopping on one of those things? I went to a meeting this morning and I forgot my notes, and I was reading the minutes of the last meeting on my iPhone as the meeting was going on. You just wouldn't have comprehended that those things existed. Plus, I think we also need to push the innovation aspect of it. If they keep up to speed with the technologies, they can apply those innovations to the business, and therefore the business is hopefully going to be ahead of the wave as opposed to being behind the wave, which an awful lot of SMEs potentially are.